on your very own fish in your very own classroom, we hope that you'll still be able to learn something with us each day. Although there's more than 30,000 different types of fish in the whole world, in Montana we have only 91 different species. The fish that we're going to work on in this dissection is one of those 91 fish. Most of the fish have a lot of the same body parts. So what we learn with our Montana fish applies to all the other fish in Montana and most of the other fish around the world. So to get started, a few vocabulary words always. Here's your big word of the day, and this is the word that describes what we call a scientific study of fish. You ready for this? The word is ichthyology. Ichthyology. Say it with me, ichthyology. How's that for a big word? You don't have to remember it. We're not going to be giving you a test. That they are the most popular fish in Montana during the winter months, during the ice fishing time. More people fish for perch than anything else. We don't consider perch to be native to Montana. That means they were brought here by humans sometimes in the past. The perch we're using today for our dissection were caught by kids from Montana schools just a few months ago while they were out ice fishing with their classes. So let's check them out. This perch is not especially big, not especially small either. It's kind of a medium-sized perch. We said they really don't get very big. If we measure this perch, it's a ruler on the perch, we see this one measures, it looks like just a little bit over 9 inches long. A really big perch is something 10, 11 inches long. A really giant perch is more like 12 inches long. In fact, the biggest perch that anybody ever caught in Montana was from Lower Stillwater Lake. That was in 2006. And that perch was over 14 inches long. So that gives you an idea on the size of a perch. When we start a dissection, we usually start with the external or the outside body parts. So let's get a look at some of the outside parts on this fish. If you look at the shape, they're long, they're thin, they're streamlined. Makes it easy for them to glide through the water. Perch are really, really good swimmers, like all fish are. When they swim, how do you think they actually move their and 2 pectoral fins, 1 fin on each side? These actually are the little fins that can help the perch swim backwards. All 3 of these fins actually 5 of these fins are there to help the perch swim and steer in the water. Remember, the caudal fin or the tail moves it through the water. On the back of the perch, there's 2 dorsal fins. If you stand them up here, one of them, the front, the big dorsal fin, has these sharp spikes in it. You may be able to see them, may be able to hear them with my finger hitting them. They're sharp. The perch can stand up that fin when it gets scared or nervous, and it's something that would help to protect it a little bit from predators. Final thing to look at is the color of the fish. They're really colorful, and you might think, well, this is not very good camouflage if you want to protect yourself from predators, but really it is. If you look at the fish, they're dark on the back, and most fish will be that way. They're dark on top, so if a predator is looking down on the fish, like a bird from up above, the dark back of the fish is going to blend in with the dark bottom of the lake. If you flip the fish over, the belly is nice and light, white or light colored. That's so if there's a predator underneath looking up. Welcome back, ichthyologists. Yesterday in our dissection, we learned some facts about today, especially we're going to look closely. They're a little hard to see, but there's 2 nose openings on each side of the fish's head. There's 2 over here, 2 over here. There's 1 is right there and 1 is right next to it. So there's sort of a little tube connecting the 2 of those little openings. If we look at the body of the perch, most fish anyway, are covered with scales. All of these tiny little scales, they're all over. Underneath the scales is a layer of skin. That's where the color of the fish is that we already talked about. And each of these scales, although they're fairly smooth, it's kind of like a tiny little armor plate. They're there to protect the fish. On top of the scales, so there's a layer of skin, there's a layer of scales. And covering the scales, there's a layer of slime. And you really can't see it, but you know it when you touch a fish. The slime is there to protect the perch or the fish from germs in the water, and it smooths out their body, makes them even more slippery as they're able to swim or to try and get away from predators. If we're looking for ears on the perch, you really don't see any ears. There are no big external ears like a human has or a dog or a cat. The perch are still able to detect sounds underwater really well. So instead of the 2 big ears on the side of their head like we have, perch really have hundreds of small ears down the sides of their body. And although I call it a hole on the fish, might be 100 on each side. So 100 over here, 100 on the other side of the fish, 200 little holes. We call those special scales a lateral line. and a lateral line takes the place of ears on a fish. So it shows us really fish do hear sounds. So maybe that's why people whisper when they go fishing, right? Last thing we want to check out is the mouth of the perch. To start with, do you see any teeth? We pry this open and look inside. I don't see any teeth, but I do see a tongue in there. And their tongue is different from the tongue of a mammal. It's made of cartilage. It's not muscular, but they do have a tongue. And we already said there's no teeth. We don't see any big flat grinding molars like a human or a horse or a cow has. We certainly don't see any teeth in there like the sharp cutting teeth on a shark. But if you feel teeth that are in here to grab onto their prey, the perch. Today, we're going to start transitioning the same thing. It protects their delicate gills, and they're found underneath that operculum. Do the same thing. It's hard, it's bony, protects those gills underneath. To get to the gills, for us to take out a gill and find the parts, we have to get rid of this operculum. So I'm going to use tweezers and a scissors. I'm going to hold that up, and I'm going to cut my way. You can kind of hear that sort of crunching as we go, because what's an operculum made of? It's made of bone, right? So we'll cut our way through that operculum, get rid of it, and expose the gills underneath. And when we do that, you're going to see the gills are down there, and they're red, and these have been washed a little bit, so they're kind of pink. Why do you think they'd be red? What could possibly be inside of a gill that would make them red? The answer to that, of course, is blood. Blood flows through the gills, picks up the oxygen dissolved in the water, and carries it out into the body of the fish. So the parts of the gills, when we actually look at them, you can see there's 4 gills in here. We have to take a gill out. We're going to do that quickly, and then we'll try and identify some of those parts. So if I hold just one gill with my tweezers, cut it down here, cut the other end, I've got this gill out. We're going to take the gill, clean it off, and make sure that we can find the 3 most important parts that actually make up the gill of the fish. So if we look at them, the way this gill was arranged in the fish, these short little spiky teeth were facing towards the front. They kind of look like the teeth on a rake, like you might rake your grass with. And they actually have a good name for that. We call them gill rakes. And the gill rakes are there to keep things that are in the water from getting in and damaging the rest of the gills, or kind of clog them up. In the center of the gill, there's this short little, this little piece that's kind of shaped like an arch where everything is attached to. That one has a good name too. It's called a gill arch. Finally, some things that make sense. And if you look at the rest of the gill, a lot of people think, wow, that looks sort of like an eyelash. There are all these little tubes that stick out off the back of the gill that would be red. They're little, they're fibery things, so we call them gill fibers, and they are full of blood, and that's where the oxygen that's dissolved in the water transfers into the fish's blood, and the carbon dioxide comes out of the fish's blood. So they kind of look like an eyelash. We call them gill fibers, a gill arch in the middle, and gill rakes on the front. And of course, covering up that whole thing, that bony flap that we cut off is called the operculum. So those are the 4 parts of the gill. That's all we have time for today. Next time, we're going to learn how the fish's eyes work. So see you then. It's kind of like the little window in a room that would let the light come in. This clear spot in the center of the fish's eye is called a pupil. When the light goes into the fish's eye, passes through the pupil into the eye, there's like a little clear ball inside of there. It looks like a little marble. It's called a lens. And the lens focuses the light inside the eye, just like the lens on a telescope would do. And then it allows the light to shine onto the back of the fish's eyeball. Way back there, deep inside the eyeball, is a layer of cells called a retina. And the retina works almost like a solar panel on the fish. When the light hits the retina, the retina turns the light into electricity. And then it has that electricity and has to send it somewhere. The electricity gets sent off to the fish's brain, a very short distance. The brain is right here on a nerve. And the special nerve that carries the electricity from the eye to the brain is called the optic nerve. So we're going to try and get an eyeball out of our fish, find as many of those parts as we can, and see if we can explain it. We're going to flip our fish and try and get an eyeball out and try and find the parts. And the eyeball is held inside of the eye socket by all kinds of muscles, kind of hard to get out. So we'll try and get underneath there, grab the eyeball from underneath, pull it out, and we'll see if we're lucky. We'll get a nice optic nerve to come along. There's the, kind of see it hanging down there on the bottom. We have the eyeball out. with the nerve coming off of there. And what we want to do is to try and get the lens out from inside. So here we have a nice fish eye. I'm going to try and grab it with the tweezers. There's lots of liquid inside of the eye that the lens kind of floats inside of. So we'll cut through there, cut that into 2 pieces, and we will see if we can get that fish's lens to pop right out. Remember, we said the lens kind of, there it is. It kind of looks like a little BB or a little marble. It's clear. The light shines through there. Here's our fish lens. You see how cool that looks? We'll try and clean it off a little bit. And that is the fish's lens, similar to what all other eyeballs have inside of them, a lens. The light goes through that lens. It hits the retina at the back of the eye. We can't really see that because it's just a layer of thin cells back there. But the retina would turn the light into electricity, kind of zap it off to the fish's brain through that optic nerve. And I don't remember, I think there's our optic nerve. Just see a little piece of it hanging down. The other end of that optic nerve, remember, what would it be connected to? Be connected to the brain of the fish. So that's all the parts of the eyes. Pretty complicated, but really cool if you think about how this fish's eye works exactly the same way, really, that your eye works. So next time, come back, we'll do some more internal anatomy on our fish and go even a little bit further. See you then. Tract, pelvic fins are, there's a layer of bone there, and it's going to get hard. We're going to have to kind of, when we open up the body cavity on our perch to find all the internal organs, we're going to start back here at the vent. We're going to slide our scissors right in the vent, start cutting. And right now we're just cutting through skin, so it's pretty easy. As soon as we get up to where these pelvic fins are, there's a layer of bone there, and it's going to get hard. We're going to have to kind of crunch our way through that bone. And we are going to keep cutting all the way up between the gills of the fish, see what we can find. So now we've got the only cut made. We're going to pry things open, and we will look initially at the internal organs inside of the fish. First thing we see right on top, we're going to move out of the way, is this tube that runs from the digestive system of the fish in front back here to the vent. That is the large intestine. That's the end of the digestive tract. When the food is all used up in the fish, it passes out of the body as fish poop right out the vent. So we're just going to cut that off so we can work our way around this, because the next thing we're going to look for underneath here, see this big kind of purple orangish lump. This tells us right away, we know this perch was a female and these are her eggs. So we can get those eggs out of there. If we grab the eggs, it'll give us a lot more room to work with. All that really holds them in place are a few little arteries and veins. We can take those eggs out in one clump. And we're not going to count them now, but I would guess if we look closely at here, there might be 3 or 4 or 5,000 eggs. They're tiny, they're very small, but lots of them. And a perch this size might lay 5,000 eggs every single year. So we will set those eggs aside in one big egg mass over there, and we will move our attention up a little bit closer to the front of the perch. And I need to open this up a little bit more, because way up here between the gills, not the easiest thing to see, but this little red lump up here, shaped almost like a little triangle, is the fish's heart. So the heart is way up here. There's chamber on top, chamber on the bottom. If we grab this by the top, by the arteries and veins that come into the top of the heart, if we're careful, we should be able to just take that heart, split a little bit, but that is our perch's heart right there. So these are the arteries and veins. Here's the heart. We will set the fish's heart off to the side. We're going to keep going. So now some of the organs are out. There's still a few things left in here. The important stuff, the digestive system, the way the food works through the fish. Covering all of the digestive system is this big pink organ. That's the liver. And the liver produces fluids. They're called enzymes, and they help the fish digest its food when it is down here into the fish's stomach, which is kind of hidden underneath all of this down here. Here's our fish's stomach. We have to kind of pick our way through all these. It's a muscular organ. To actually get food into the stomach, starts up here in the mouth, and there's a tube called the esophagus. And if I slide my tweezers down there, I can control all this, but if I slide the tweezers down, it'll go right down the fish's esophagus, all the way down here into the bottom, and out here is the fish's stomach, and there's the end of my tweezers. So that's the fish's stomach, which is covered by the liver. The food starts digesting when it's in the stomach, passes through the stomach into the intestines, which is this whole mass right here, through the small intestines first. That's where the nutrients from the food is absorbed into the fish's body. And then whatever blood from the fish, some of the liquid that's in there. And you see this shiny layer of almost looks like skin. It's a membrane inside of the fish. And what that's called is the fish's air bladder. And what would you guess happens to be inside of an air bladder? What do you think it's full of? Air, right? Makes sense? It's different from a human. This red line is the fish's kidney. So if you know about humans or mammals, we have two kidneys. They're small and they're round, about the size of your fist. We can take kidneys out of people. They're easy to grab onto in there. In a fish, this long, flat kidney is not easy to get out. We can't take it out. We can't show you. So you just have to look at it right here. And as I run my finger along this fish's kidney, the muscle is also the part that we're going to eat when we eat fish. We're not going to eat this one. But if you like to eat fish, what you're actually eating there is the muscle. We've seen a lot. So it's right up here in the top of its head. Okay, we need to try and protect our brain. And what do you think surrounds? We find the eye. The brain's right up here in the top of its head, back behind the eye. The problem with doing this, though, we have to get the skull apart. It's a hard bone, but we have to be really careful. If we hit that brain with our tweezers or our scissors, it's going to turn to mush, and there's going to be nothing for us to see. So very carefully, we're going to make a couple of cuts. We're going to go from one eye to the other on the perch, just right down its skull. We'll cut through the skull there, and then we have to turn and cut right up the fish's skull without cutting too deeply. The brain's inside of there. We do not want to touch it with our scissors. So we've got two cuts. We made a cut this way, we make a cut this way. But somewhere hidden underneath there, the brain is down inside. It doesn't want to just pop right open and show us our brain. So this is our chance. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some strong thumbs. We have to try and wedge our thumbs into that first cut that we made and see if we can pry that apart. Pry apart the other side. If we do that successfully, pry away a little bit of the bone and the muscle that's in there, we may get lucky and be able to see our fish's brain. Pretty well hidden in this fish. Get through there. We know some of that. The brain is right underneath. It's kind of a light pink colored. We'll get rid of some of the liquid. The brain is right down inside of here. This light pink right there is all of the fish's brain. It's not really made of muscle like the other tissue, so we can just grab it like we did the heart and just yank it right out of there. But we can give it a try. At the front of the brain are going to be the optic nerves, and at the back, it's going to run into the fish's spine. This one's getting pretty soft, but we're starting to lift it. That whole pink thing underneath the end of the tweezers is the fish's brain. So here's one more fish that we got the brain. This one shows up a little bit better. You can see the lobes are the three parts of the brain, three parts of this one. The optic nerve is this little white line right here that's attached to the back of the fish's eye. That shows up pretty nicely. But again, you can see just how small that brain is and where it is right behind the fish's eyes. I wonder why it's so hard for me to catch a fish when they have such a small brain. Right?
দেখছো ফিশ কিভাবে ডিসেকশন করতে হয়, করতে দিলে পারবা তোমরা? ফিশকে যদি ডিসেকশন করতে দেওয়া হয় পারবা?
জি ম্যাম।
প্যাথোলজিতে কি করতে হয়?
জি ম্যাম, ট্রাই করা যাবে।
হ্যাঁ, প্যাথোলজিতে আমরা এটা ফিশ ডিসেকশন নরমালি সব সাবজেক্টে একই নিয়মে করে। আমরা প্যাথোলজির ক্ষেত্রে কেন ডিসেকশন করব? সিস্টেমিক ইনফেকশন আছে, সাধারণত হচ্ছে যে সিস্টেমের যে ইনফেকশনগুলো হয় সেগুলোর জন্য আমাদেরকে ডিসেকশন করে ভিতরে অর্গান থেকে ব্রেনে যে কোনো প্যাথোজেন আছে কিনা, লিভারে কোনো প্যাথোজেন আছে কিনা, হার্টে কোনো প্যাথোজেন আছে কিনা, এর জন্য ওই জায়গা থেকে স্যাম্পল নিয়ে ইনক্লুডেড করতে হয় বা কালচার করে দেখতে হয় যে এখানে কোনো প্যাথোজেন আছে কিনা। এই জন্য কিন্তু আমাদের হচ্ছে মূলত ডিসেকশনটা জরুরি। কারণ যে এলোমেলো করে যদি মাছ কাটো তাহলে কি হবে, বাইরে থেকে প্যাথোজেন কন্টামিনেশন হয়ে যাবে, তখন সঠিকটা পাওয়া যাবে না। এই জন্য নিয়ম মেনে ফিশকে ডিসেকশন করতে হয়। ঠিক আছে, আজকে ক্লাস এই পর্যন্তই। কালকে ভালো করে পরীক্ষা দাও, পরীক্ষার পরে আবার প্র্যাকটিক্যাল ক্লাস আরো 2টা হবে, ঠিক আছে? আজকে এখানে রাখলাম। তোমাদের পরীক্ষা নিয়ে কারো কোনো কিছু বলার থাকলে এখনই সুযোগ, বলতে পারো, আর না হলে আমি আজকে এখনই শেষ করলাম। কিছু করার আছে কারো?
ম্যাম শীটের বাইরে তো কিছু আসবে না তাই না?
শীটের বাইরে আসবে কিনা যায় না, তো আমি যা পড়াইছি, যতটুকু সিলেবাস দিয়েছি সিলেবাসের মধ্যে থেকে আসবে। এখন সবকিছু শীট থেকে আসবে, আমিও তো অনেক কথা বলছি, তাহলে আমার একটা কথা বলা দরকার, আমার কথা থেকেও তো আসতে পারে। আমি অনেক কথাবার্তা বলেছি, সেই কথাবার্তা থেকে তো আসতে পারে, কিন্তু সিলেবাসের ভিতরে আসবে। সিলেবাস আমি দিয়েছি, সেই সিলেবাসের ভিতর থেকে আসবে,
জি ম্যাম।
ঠিক আছে? আমি শেষ করলাম ক্লাস।
জি ম্যাম। আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম ম্যাম।